All right. Let's call the June 26th Facilities Committee meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. It looks like call of the roll. We are all here. I entertain a motion to approve last month's. All right. Supervisor Bjork. Second. Okay, Barbara Lyons. All right. Any comments on them? Any revisions? Nope. So then we'll call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Approved unanimously. Is there any public comment? Okay. So then item 5 is the 2025 budget considerations and discussion.
We'll turn that over to Dan.
Dan, yes.
Madam Chairman, I don't have any public comments here, but I have heard a lot of good public comments about the blacktop at the fairground.
Oh,
So-
yeah, it looks nice.
In the hinterland, they like what they got. And it's highly noticed that they've pulled that fence out, blacktop, and put her back in.
Yes, my guys worked hard on that in the heat.
Yeah.
All right. So some of you have been through this. This is an item that Chris and I have added to every one of the standing committees to talk through some things about the 2025 budget to really kind of get some of those discussions going. And to help us understand kind of where the full board is and to help the executive committee understand where the full board is as they go forward with some of the budget deliberations that go forward. So you have a couple of people on this committee from the executive committee that have been through this at least once. And I know Larry's been through it as well. So so this has kind of been an ever evolving type situation or conversation that we've had through multiple meetings. So in your packet, there is a graph page that kind of looks like this. And so what that graph represents, so on the left side, you'll see the funding and expenses for 2024. Those are pretty close to the actuals, maybe a little bit of rounding happening there, but right around the actuals of our county tax funding and the related expenses. So you may know our budget is actually closer to the 90 million, and this is only reflecting about 36.6. This 36.6 is essentially the discretionary fund. So this funding you can do anything with it. As a board, you can choose what you want to do. The rest of that funding typically has strings attached to it in some way, shape, or form where it has to be used for certain purposes. So we don't necessarily reflect that because there's not a lot of decision making that can be done about those expenses. So as we kind of go through that funding, if you work your way from the bottom to the top, kind of works the best. So on the bottom, on the left side, you'll see the 2024 debt levy. So that's the amount of money that we ask the taxpayers to provide in order to pay our debt service. And so you'll see that $5 million corresponds with the debt service in the second column. Then we move up, we have state aids. So that is the county's portion of state income tax that the state provides us, which is actually based on state sales tax. So that's kind of how they figure out how much we're going to get. The next one is county sales tax. So that is the 0.5%. So, or you get a 5.5% sales tax. So that 0.5 is the county. And then we have the levy of 19.6 million. So that is that in addition to the debt levy So, which comes pretty close to about 25 million. That is the amount that we are actually requesting from the property tax owners in Dunn County. And then in 2024, we use some general fund, we use some borrowing, and we use some ARPA in order to kind of balance out those expenses that exist in the second column. So second column, we have debt service. Then we have operations supplies and operations salary and fringe. So operations is just kind of that general word that we're talking about of the services that are provided by the county. So the supplies are, that could be buying computer software, that could be buying pencils, that could be buying gravel, that could be buying any sort of kind of good. And then we have salary and fringe, which is paying for the salaries for employees in those operations areas. And then in addition to that, we have highway projects. Highway projects are not to be confused with highway maintenance. So maintenance is plowing snow. Well, it's plowing snow, it's mowing the sides of the roads, it's crack filling, it's potholes, things like that. Projects are typically, and we'll kind of get into this a little bit more, typically defined when we take concrete off or take pavement off and put new pavement on is kind of is the simplest explanation of what a project is. That could be a culvert replacement, different things like that, bridges, throughout that. So you can see in 2024 how that came out. In 2025, we have projections. So departments within the county, we haven't even submitted our budgets to administration yet, right? So these are kind of preliminary numbers, but we know what we've asked departments to do and kind of where we expect things to be. So from the funding standpoint, these are pure projections, but based on historic norms and as we're tracking different things and how things are going this year. So our debt levy always corresponds with our debt service. So we know how much money we have to pay on our debt in 2025. So we know what our debt service is, and that's going to be right around that 5 million. And as you've seen those presentations, you see where we kind of talk about where those levels have been and as they go up and down. State aids is tied to sales tax. So we kind of know that sales tax numbers in the state of Wisconsin are actually going up. They're trending upward. We get reports on those monthly, so we know kind of where we are. So we're projecting based on that. County sales tax, same thing, same report. So we know that we're kind of trending upward. So you can see an increase in state aid of about 300,000 and an increase in county sales tax of about 200,000. The levy is tied to net new construction. That is a number that we get provided really at the last minute. But typically in Dunn County, we live around about a 1.2 to 1.4% increase in net new construction, or not increase, but our net new construction is right around there. So that's how we can kind of project where we're going to be in our levies. So you can see that going up at about $400,000. So that being said, I'll do the simple math for you. That is about $1 million increase from 2024 if you add up the state aids, the county sales tax, and the levy increase. So on that far right column then are the projected expenses that we have. So we look at our debt service, which is us paying off our debt. And then we have our operations supplies and our operations salary and fringe. Those numbers we are projecting a 0% change in those. So it's the exact number that you see in 2024. I will tell you that the complexity of that is very difficult to get the real number of how much that is. So we do project that salary and fringe is about 2/3 of the overall operations cost. So if you had a calculator out there, you can do that. Yeah. So the supplies are about 1/3 of the operation costs, and salary and fringe is about 2/3. So then that next column up there, we are looking at the salary and benefits change. So that is if we were to give employees a raise, as we typically would, that's going to cost about $1 million. And then on the top there, we have projection for highway projects, and this is something as we qualify this over and over again. The highway commissioner goes out, does a whole lot of research in order to figure out the best roads to go after and how to do that, and to develop a plan to be able to keep our roads up to date. And this number reflects getting our replacement or our maintenance of our roads on a 20-year schedule, of which we're currently at about a 40+ year schedule. So that's a big number, and that's because it's Dustin's job to advocate for getting us the best roads that we can. So that's where that number comes from. And then I did provide a second page here that you can see that it just kind of shows operations departments. So as we kind of use this generic term of operations, I want you to at least know what we're talking about when we do that. So these are the departments that receive some of this discretionary funding. So once again, this is funding that can be used anywhere that you want it to. So what you're not going to see in that operations department is like the Transit Commission. Transit Commission does not receive any county tax funding. It's all grant funded. So that is not something that we're talking about when we talk about operations. Highway maintenance is in there, right? So the maintenance is actually paid for out of that operations budget. Yep. Highway maintenance it lives inside of that operations salary and fringe and supplies. So when you talk about that $9 million in operations supplies, some of that is buying gravel for shoulders or, fuel for plows or whatever it might be. Yep. Yep. Sorry. Yeah. Yep. 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 So yeah, so if you kind of go through that whole, if you take the operations salary and fringe and operations supplies, these are the departments that are using that funding. And that doesn't mean they're 100% funded that way. Highway, for instance, has other funding sources such as the state and local government and different things, but those are not included on here. So, that being said, after I give a little description about that graph, and there you started off. Any questions? I want you to understand that before we move on.
Well, I certainly am glad. Okay, sorry. Am I on?
Yep.
I'm certainly glad to see that a second time. I had a hard time with it the first time. And when executive committee members get frustrated with me because I don't understand it when I hear it the first time, and they're hearing it the second time, well, I don't understand it. So I got a couple questions.
Sure.
Okay, highway projects is not maintenance. I've always understood that.
Yep.
So highway projects is rebuilding roads, not just patching them up.
Correct.
Okay. During the time when we had capital improvements, there was a big dollar out there for highway for facility buildings, right?
Correct.
Is that just long gone or not considered, or does it fall in here someplace?
So what you're seeing in 2025, we are not projecting to have a capital improvement budget or expenses in 2025. So
And that's from the executive committee going through the ask and cutting out like the building for the sheriff's department and other capital improvement.
yeah, we moved some capital improvement expenses from 25 to 24 in order to utilize remaining ARPA funds and different things
Okay.
like that, and have essentially eliminated the 2025 capital improvement request.
I'm a big believer in the 7 million is not enough
I
for
do.
highway projects.
Yep.
Everybody should know that. And, 2 questions then. To reach the 7 million or 8 million or 10 million, is there any room left in the ask for property taxpayers, or is that maxed out?
Maxed out.
Okay, because for years I have heard, I've heard Warren Petrie say every time he sees Dave Bartlett coming, he wants to go in the other direction because Dave has been a big component that, it should be a higher amount. So I assumed it was maxed out.
Yep.
So the only way that you could get to 7 million on highway projects is taking money away from other departments. Is that right?
There's there's others. Yeah.
Well,
can
no,
decrease
okay.
expenses or
One of the ways to get to
increase
7 million is take money away from other departments.
Correct.
Okay. So here's what I find a little uneasy about this. Is that we go ahead and we add positions like yours and night guy at the jail, more people for the district attorney's office. We go and we increase salaries for our elected officials. So we, in the front end, go ahead and spend all this money on people. And then when it comes to work that the people do, like the highway department, I'll say, then we have no money. And it's like the wish lists. I was thinking about it today, cutting hay. It's like going to the grocery store and going up and down the aisle and picking out whatever it is you see you like. And then you go to the checkout and you start ringing it up and you realize that you don't have the money that it takes for the things that you've got in the cart. That seems to be the way we're doing it, instead of know how much money you got, fill your cart with things that you can pay for and be on your way. So I've been told, Larry, just follow the budget process. What's the matter with you, you knucklehead? Well, we spend all that money on what we want in the grocery cart, or and then when we get to the end, we don't have the cash to pay for the stuff. So maybe I still don't get it, but I understand what you're asking for and understand what the changes are. It's just that I think the process is a little flawed, that we become very generous and then we find out we don't have the money to be generous. So
Yep.
That's all I got.
Yep. I would argue, Larry, that your description there perfectly explains what's going on. Yeah. Right. I think the big thing is the groceries in the grocery cart are people's jobs and services that the county provides that people have become dependent on. But yeah. So, no. All right. So, yep.
So, you borrow $3 million. Is that going to be added on to that later on for 2025?
So borrowing in 2025 is something that the board will have to vote on if they choose to do that. The $3 million that has been discussed over time was a plan that essentially administration has kind of worked under the assumption that you would have $3 million, but we know that that's not necessarily something everybody agrees on. So it is not a guarantee. That is something that will have to be voted on. So, yep. And why it's not included. So, all right. So as we go through, if you've done this before, so we're gonna just ask you to think through what are the impacts that we should take into account when reducing or eliminating highway projects. And so we've kind of talked about this. What highway projects are is essentially taking off the surface of the road and putting a new surface down. Let's talk about the chip sealing is maintenance. But if you're going to grind down concrete, that is a project. So this is the part where everybody gets to provide any feedback of what you think some of the impacts that the board should take into account if they were to choose to not provide that $7 million ask for highway projects.
Well, if we don't, the roads are just gonna keep deteriorating and we're gonna continue to have people complaining. It's bad PR for the county.
Can make them all gravel.
I warn nobody can read my handwriting, myself included. I just put it up there.
The issue with making roads all gravel is that it's going to affect the economic development of the county,
Yeah.
as will 4 roads.
I don't want to rain on anybody's good idea because everybody has ideas. But the other committee I was on that discussed this, a serious proposal was that we need to find roads where there's only one person that lives on them and then close the road after the person's driveway and eliminate roads in Dunn County. And it was a serious proposal, eliminate roads in Dunn County. Mr. Highwayman, have you ever heard of such a thing happening?
I don't know of any roads that only have one person for a county road and that doesn't have anybody after that, that doesn't connect to another county road. So
Okay,
not sure how that would ever work. Although we are trying to get rid of a road in Springbrook. County
yeah,
Road
they're gonna
8.
close that one.
Not close it,
Well, yeah, whatever.
but it's gonna cost a lot of money to get rid of it, so Springbrook would take it over, so.
Yeah. So that is an idea, but I don't know of any places like Springbrook. Besides, when we get the solar panels down there, it's gonna be a must-see destination, so. But that was a proposal and I mean, I think that's how desperate people are to come up with an idea to save money. Close county roads. Or, I would assume that they would be talking about township roads. I mean, you can't just close a county road, can you?
Guess they're fixing it.
Okay. Enough of that.
Like culverts and stuff. Could they, change your inspection a little bit, make them last longer? And bridges, I know they're probably mandated, the bridges being fixed, so there's no, they're just automatic.
I don't know about automatic, but they are certainly inspected and evaluated, and when they meet certain levels, there's restrictions put on them or they're closed down, right? They can't become a safety concern, but and I think as you talk about the economic impact, I think that's probably the thing is as soon as a bridge gets to a certain level, then there comes a weight restriction on it. Now we're impacting the grain trucks and the milk trucks and the and all of those things that are going down those.
And then I've noticed that they drive down county roads spraying weeds. Do they have to do that?
They don't. They do that to decrease mowing costs.
Okay. So either or.
Yep.
All right.
I assume you'd correct me if I'm wrong there, but
The
that
cost is pretty close.
there's also invasives
I
that.
was gonna say, they
that-
get rid of the noxious invasive weeds with the spray versus trying to mow all that, so. If you didn't spray it, just spend a lot more time mowing, which is very expensive also.
And then when they do maintenance on the shoulders, every year, and then at the winter time, they grade them off. You think they should just leave them the way they are?
I'd leave that to Larry.
Well, I cut hay in a field a mile from the farm today. And I was very fortunate that I was on County Trunk E. It was in a 14-foot hay vine. Right front tire of the tractor is on this center line. The implement is on the center line and the tire on the right is running on the shoulder. And I was very pleased Dunn County Highway and the work that they've done at County Trunk E. And when I turned on Township Road by Iron Creek Church, on my way home, I had to find a spot 4 different times where a car behind me, I had to pull off on not pull off, but I was able to get over. And the only way that a car could pass me was that I had to get off the road probably 3 feet. And I did it, didn't have a problem with it. But I have had the one finger salute for being courteous like that over the years, but it hasn't been for a while. When you get old, it doesn't bother you. It doesn't bother me.
Yep.
So big difference on shoulders.
I suppose you could go the other direction and it's easy to just push the highways and delay the projects versus trying to cut people's jobs and things to, provide services.
Which is why the highway budget stayed the same for 20 years.
I don't want to paraphrase, but it is deferring costs as opposed to cutting services.
Well, they can always, spray paint potholes ahead,
That's my favorite sign on Highway 29 with the little bumps over the culvert. They just put bumps. Put a sign up. That'll fix it. So, all right. Any other impacts for highway projects that people want to capture? No. All right. All right. Our next part is is kind of a level of voting. So you should have 3 green Post-it notes. And if you don't have a pen, let me know, get you one. So what I want you to do on the top of that is just write highway, HWY, something like that. And then, so thinking about all of these things, with 0 being no projects and 5 being something similar to last year's ask, right around that 4.5 million, 5 million, and 10 being the full, all requested projects. Where do you kind of live around your thoughts about where you would what you would like to do? We get to live in make-believe land where you don't have to think about revenues at this point.
Oh, that's what I was just gonna
All
ask.
right.
Okay.
So, well, all right, maybe a little bit. Right, so, um, you vote 10 for all of these things, it's not going to be very helpful. Well, you can't.
That's the problem.
If that's how you feel, then we know where we are, but. All right,
What was the first 2 numbers
So-
besides 10?
so it's anywhere from 0 to 10, but
Okay.
0 would be no money for highway projects, 5 is right around that middle, and 10 is 7 million. Not encouraging this, but some people have been known to vote over 10, but. Skews our averages. So. So. All right, once that's done, we move on. So it's a similar question, but we're gonna now talk around salaries. So what are the impacts that should be taken into account when reducing or eliminating funding for salary increases? So this is just giving employees a raise, right? Salary increases are typically applied in 2 ways. We have what we call a grid adjustment or a cost of living adjustment. So if you're familiar, we have a wage grid. People can live on different levels of it, and then they step forward over time. So a grid adjustment adjusts all of the cells of that grid. And what that does, it applies to every employee. But one of the most important parts about the grid adjustment is it moves the bottom, which is where like essentially the starting salary. So if we don't make grid adjustments over time, we'd be hiring people at a wage that is essentially not high enough to compete in the marketplace. The other adjustment that we do is the steps. And so that's employees after they gain experience are stepping up 1 step every time. So you may hear a cost of living in steps or a grid adjustment in steps. That's the typical ways that we have. They're both kind of out there, and how we can do this. Steps are kind of a predetermined amount of money. The grid adjustment is something that we go from year to year. These numbers at $1 million is based on a 2% grid adjustment plus steps. So the question now is, what are the impacts that should be taken into account when reducing or eliminating funding for salary increases?
Question, Dan.
Yep.
How does Dunn County compete in the marketplace as far as hiring?
I think we've become at the level now where we're living maybe not at the mean, like our starting wages aren't at the average, but they're, call it like maybe 40%.
Mhm.
Close to, if the average is 50%, we're living in about that 40, which I would say is for the most part competitive. And those are things that we're always kind of moving with, and they're moving from year to year too, right? So so the 2% is actually based on recommendations from consultants. Say
Mhm.
this is kind of what you would be looking at doing in order to maintain the same level of competitiveness that you're at right now. and we had made an adjustment to 3 years ago of a much more considerable amount in order to adjust that grid from, I won't tell you what to write on the board, but it was because you didn't do it. At one point, you fell behind and then you have to make that adjustment. Yep.
Is people retiring faster than you hire, or is it the other way around?
There's certainly, we're getting a little bit closer to being able to maintain that, but there is always vacant positions available, whether that's all due to retirement or not, I wouldn't say, but we do know, and I think it was shared, I know, I see these presentations so many times, I know it was shared with executive and administration, but I want to say that it is like 30 or 40% of our workforce is retirement eligible now.
Yeah.
Could tomorrow just be gone.
I'm in the same boat.
So
And retire right
yeah.
now.
So yeah, so it's one of those things that being competitive and being able to refill those is an important aspect. But
Do they have to work a 40-hour week? Can they? Or is it that busy that they have to be here that long, or do they work overtime a lot?
that all really depends on where people work. I think for the most part, most departments try to avoid overtime as much as you can because of the costs associated with it. But especially with with turnover or work shortages, we see that in emergency management and in the neighbors. I know probably taking a little bit more overtime. I think the sheriff's department is a little bit more settled, and the jail is a little bit more settled now. Highway, for the most part, I think is only really seeing overtime with snow events. But shortened hours has other implications as well. So unless people want them.
What about general turnover, beyond retirement? I mean, do people, when people get a job with the county, do they tend to stay for a long time?
So they did. I would say the workforce, especially over the last maybe 5 years, and has been highly volatile with the with COVID and I think work from home opportunities and different things like that led to a lot of people moving jobs. I think we're starting to get a little bit more stability, but the research out there tells us that the younger generations are, for the most part, not starting a job and working it their whole life and retiring. They're going to be changing, maybe not jobs, but entire career paths every 5 to 10 years. So I think we are seeing some of that, but I would say in the last year or so, we've seen a little bit more stability than we saw a couple of years before that. And a lot of that was with the nursing home and the jail and then the police department. A lot of those, our sheriff's department, as a lot of those areas were much more, I think, affected by COVID as well. So.
And does administration, when they make a proposal, is the consideration on the economic growth? Were we at 1.2, 1.4, something like that? I mean, I'm assuming that's, am I saying it correctly? Is it
The
valuation?
The net new construction you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I thought at one time you almost needed to be at 7 to really be viable. So what I'm trying to get around to is that net new construction number,
Mm-hmm.
the growth that Randy goes out and finds, and what cost of living is Are these considerations on, how the step is determined, what the ask is?
I would say no, they're probably looked at a little bit more independently as you're looking at that ask, that grade adjustment in steps as we're looking at recruitment and retention type efforts, like how do we not cause turnover is really what would impact, how much we're asking there. Obviously, factors of how much how much money is available, and that's kind of the decision that we come back to the board with, and that is that, our job is to make the recommendation is to say, what a 2% cost of living in steps is what we feel we need to do in order to maintain our workforce at the level that they're at. You get to decide if you want to change
know.
that.
And then I don't have the figures with me right here, but in that green book or whatever it is that I drag out every once in a while.
Yep.
It has a figure in there as far as people that commute from one county to another. And Dunn County has a lot of people that commute in.
Yep.
And your housing people will say, well, it's because there's not enough housing. Or maybe people like me would say, well, they commute in because they can get a better job than they could where they live. And I got to give county manager a lot of credit in making a big effort to make employees feel needed and wanted, and congratulate them for the job, all the way from the picnic to every other little project that you have. Why they got so many ways to slap you on the back for doing a good job, you think you're at Walmart. I mean, they can celebrate just about anything up over there. Oh, you made it to work. Yay. So, okay, I don't have it. Are we talking about, isn't the only thing or the main thing job retention here? That's about it, isn't it?
Recruitment.
Recruitment. Yeah, well. Okay,
I'll put them
thanks.
down. All right. Any other comments on?
I have a question.
Yep.
Does the 17 million, does that take into consideration vacancies, or is that like fully staffed? Because I know
Yep.
we had this discussion last year where it was like, we wouldn't even be able to afford it if we were fully staffed.
Yeah. Yeah. So that 17 million would account for 95% staffed.
Just 5.
Which if we were at 95% staffed, it would be the first time in like 12, 13 years. So as you talk about our turnover and are we done, we typically have at least 5% of our positions not filled at a given, well, I shouldn't say it, not positions not filled. It's a funding question, right? So it may not be positions filled, but it's salaries not paid. So if you had an employee who was making $100,000 that retired, resigned, left, and you replace them with an employee that was making $80,000, you essentially have $20,000 of what you budgeted for salary and fringe still available for you. So as you see, we call it like the variance or whatever in that budget process. That's what that 5% is we just know that for the most part, if we were to budget at 100% of staffing, we would have remaining funds at the end of every year.
So the 1 million has a little wiggle room really, because the vacancy rate's a little bit higher than 5 sometimes.
Yeah, so the 1 million is is really, it's a very round number, right? So which means we're making some estimates, and that is, you have employees, so I can use an example in my department, in land information. We have employees that receive a federal or a state grant, so essentially state funding in order to do that, which pays a certain amount of their salary. So that grant might come in at $60,000 every year for 2 employees. 30,000 of that goes and pays for their salaries. The rest of it is paid for with this money. So even though 70%, only 70% of their salary is covered by this operations costs, their raise is 100% covered by that, because it doesn't increase the grant amount, right? So there's lots of situations like that. And then the other example is, you could have somebody in another area that is 100% funded, that if they get a raise, it costs absolutely nothing to do that. So it all depends. So round number of what we expect that to be. The total cost for 2% salary, 2% raise, 2% grid adjustment and steps is about 2.2 million in the overall budget, but about $1 million of that impacts this discretionary funding.
Okay, that makes more sense.
And so, yeah, so I mean, retention, it's probably cheaper to keep employees than keep trying to rehire and going through the process, so.
And without increases in wages and steps, I think the morale of the employees would be a lot poorer, and you'd be seeing them leaving to the private sector, which, like I say, is going to increase your training and stuff. So,
Yep.
I think it's important to keep wages and steps increased.
All right. So let's move on to the Post-it note part of this, right? So once again, scale 0 being wages should be frozen, no increase whatsoever, not going to cost $1 million at all. And 10 being $1 million. So where do you kind of fall on that scale?
You want this one labeled?
Salary, wage, yeah. Just not operations or highway. Good. All right. So next one is operations. What impact should be taken into account when reducing or eliminating funding for operations? So once again, operations are levy funded operations in the county. And I mentioned this before, but about 2/3 of those costs are salary and fringe. So people, and then 1/3 is supplies. And once again, the departments that we're talking about are kind of listed there. And that doesn't mean it's 100% of those departments, but some of them are 100% funded by these funds, and some of them are 30-40% funded by these funds. So what are the impacts of decreasing operations?
Less services.
More complaints.
I don't know how this falls in there, but the dollars that the highway spends on new equipment is how, everybody likes driving a new truck. I mean, is operations new equipment? I mean, do we not buy 1 year and put that money into operations? I mean, is that, or doesn't that fall into here?
So the way that highway equipment And I'm not saying it was always this way, but the way that it's being done now is for every mile or minute or whatever that is put on any sort of county equipment, that cost is accounted for in this, either in the project's budget or in the maintenance budget. So if a tractor goes down and mows the side of the road for 8 hours in a day, we're gonna say we put 8 hours on that tractor. There's a rate associated with that. That's gonna pay for the wear and the tear of that, plus the replacement cost of that. And that replacement cost is put into a separate fund so that when that tractor then has kind of put in all of its hours and time, we have the money available to replace it. So the replacement cost is kind of built into the operations or project costs.
Okay,
Make sense?
yeah, it does, but, Highway Committee would be very interesting to hear their reasonings and questionings. But I mean, you know, the weather put me out of business in 1988. So I learned a long time ago that weather variables are something that we all deal with, and sometimes it's quite severe, and other times it's just a bump in the road. This last winter was a incredibly mild winter. So I can't believe that our usage of our highway equipment for roads, you know, snow and stuff like that. I mean, you know, I don't see them running down the interstate not doing anything. So I assume, you know, I mean, how does that calculate in? The severe, I mean, or what they, you know, here would be a good example. Traditionally, how many tons of salt do you use? Well, last year you didn't use that much. So where does that money go?
So let me try and answer all of those. And Randy, you get to help. So the salt is in a pile in a shed and is going to decrease salt costs next year. And so, I mean, it's purchased years in a year in it or so in advance. So those expenses had kind of already happened. So that'll actually be a savings in 2025 that the highway department, well, probably in 2024, that the highway department isn't buying the salt that they would need for the 24-25 winter. Now, as you talk about wear and tear on or maintenance on your vehicles, so yeah, it's snowed less. But part of the highway operation is highway is partially funded that state of Wisconsin pays them to go out on state highways. So if they're not, and that's budgeted. So we have an employee that we expect to work 40 hours a week through, you know, for, you know, all year long. And we expected it to snow. It didn't snow. So the state didn't pay us. So we don't have the money to pay for that employee.
Yeah.
Now, that employee then, for the most part, what they do is we find other valuable projects to do. So if you drive down county highways, you will see that a whole lot of trees have been cut down along the edges of that, some of that long-term maintenance. And so that was putting those employees to work, but that was also putting gas in vehicles, a different vehicle, to be able to do that, and wear and tear on all of that other equipment to be able done.
Yeah.
Realistically, I think having a light winter, don't quote me on these numbers, but having a light winter, the real savings there in the highway department is the lack of overtime that they have to pay, because a lot of those other expenses do stay the same.
Okay. That's probably way off the subject.
So, well, I think it's an important thing as you look at that, because I think we hear that a lot, that it was a light winter, you should have saved a lot of money, but it's really not really true. And in some cases, we didn't get some of the money to pay for the replacement of those vehicles.
Well, I drive on this road by Ridgeland and I've seen this bulldozer sitting there for a month. So that's not being used. And then they got a payloader next to it that's been sitting there for 3 weeks. So if some of this equipment that we have, you know, do we have too many of these equipment that they allow them to sit around and not being used?
Now you're outside of my pay grade. So,
Pretty good so far.
right, I know. I can assume that the highway department would tell you, no, that's not true. And you know, there's a likelihood that like that is sitting there because there's a known project that's happening down on that end of the county. And it wouldn't be feasible to drive it all the way to Menominee in order to drive it all the way back. So. That's a guess, though. So,
Never mind.
Yeah, all the, you know, the equipment sits when we're blacktopping or something. They're using all the drivers, all the employees just for trucking, so some equipment has to sit sometimes, so that's what happens.
At least they know where it's at.
yeah. They have a great inventory of what is what is going on. Those plow trucks are on GPS. They know where they are at any time.
So what were we talking about?
Right. So this had come up in another committee. So this is agendaed as a discussion about the budget. You get to talk about anything. And that's budget related. So if you have questions, that's a piece of that, but we were talking about cutting operations.
I would think that could reduce morale if you don't have the funds to provide the services. And also I would think trying to cut those expenses would be very complicated and would get
Spoken like somebody that worked at Stout.
I've worked in budgets for a long time. Budgets are fun.
All right, then we will move on to the voting on this one. Not voting, shouldn't use that word. So you want to rate your stance once again with, in this particular case, a 0 is to decrease operations by $1 million or greater. And a 10 is to maintain operations at the existing level that it is. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. You went through this at exec and we've adjusted that scale so that we can define it better.
Questionnaire stuff.
All right. And with that, I'll stop talking about budget unless you have additional questions. I'm happy to answer any of those. Part of what we want is for these smaller group discussions about budget so that we can all make sure we have all of those questions answered. It's not an easy thing to do with 29 people in a room. With that, we can move on.
All right, thank you. So we'll move on to item 6, which are staff and recreation reports. So the fair and fair board. Deb?
Good evening. Well, the fair is coming quicker than I really think it should, but time marches on. I'm currently have hours at the fair office that I'm there to answer questions and work with people that are entering or whatever. The hours that through July 11th that I'll be there in person are posted on the website. Entries are coming in. We just had they were coming in pretty slow, and then all of a sudden we just had a surge of entries. So it's getting closer. So people are out there getting those in. I'm working with the meeting and working and meeting with our advertising partners to get that all set up, and some of our sponsors that have been kind of dragging their feet a little bit after last year's disaster. So hopefully we'll come out okay with our sponsor piece. And probably the biggest news we have is that we did cancel the lactating cows at the fair. We're not allowing any lactating cows. in the dairy show. The state DADCAP and the state veterinarian has mandated that cows have to be tested and have a negative test for influenza A 7 days prior to the fair. And it's a hardship to get that test done, first of all, because the only place that'll do it is in Madison, and they only test 3 days. And we just felt the risk was too great for the reward for the number of cows that we would have. So it'll be strictly a heifer show this year for the dairy part of it. Beef cows that are there that have calves or whatever, they are excluded, along with dairy goats are excluded from that mandate. This is ever changing, and if you ever want to get bogged down in reading information, I mean, I sat in on an hour and 15-minute webinar one day when the 3 state vets were speaking, and they had sent out at 8 o'clock that morning the communication of what they were going to be talking about, and at noon that webinar started. These are all the updates that happened between 8 and noon. They went through that first. So, I mean, it's just changes so fast. But we just felt that it was better just to cancel the lactating cows for our protection, exhibitors' protection, and our visitors. But also the schedule, we've added a couple little events we're having after and I might have mentioned this last time, but I didn't know for sure if it was happening. Right after the kitty tractor pull, there will be a stuffed animal show for the younger kids that cannot bring animals to the fair, live animals to the fair. At 3rd grade and under, or under 3rd grade, 2nd grade and under. So that'll be there. And the car show, our first annual car show, will be on Sunday from 9 to 1. And there's also a cornhole tournament that day. And I'll just pass around this informational sheet. This is the kids that are exhibiting meat animals this year. So kids right now are coming into the fair office to pick up invitations to pass out. So I didn't bring one for everybody because we usually run short. And I had one kid that came today and he says, I need 12. And I'm like, oh, you only have to do 2. And he goes, nope, I want 12. So, hey, get the word out. So anyway, but yeah, we're really busy right now. At least I'm really busy right now. Ron's really busy. And Larry too. So anybody have any questions?
Questions? Thanks, Deb.
Can I
Oh, there is one? Okay.
offer a wish list for Deb and Dunn County? I remember a guy in the 60s and 70s. His name was Greg Randolph. Randolph. Greg, and he was a photographer for the Dunn County News. And just wanted to show you Colfax Messenger, how a local newspaper, supports the youth and people that support the youth. And nothing like being a kid and getting your picture in the paper.
Oh, God, it's
And,
my favorite thing to do.
I don't know if we're ever gonna have a Dunn County News like we used to have a Dunn County News. But great rewards to people that take the time and their dollars to recognize youth that are doing a good job. And I don't know a kid that doesn't feel the esteem and gratitude of having your name in the paper for whatever it is. And if you look, one girl in here, she must had about 8 or 10 different things, all the way from her chickens to decorating stuff and pickles. And she's over here. Well, anyway, she's Gary Bjork's niece, Lila, I think I say her name. So it's, just here nor there. It's just, when you can recognize youth, you're doing a good thing.
All right, 6B, so facilities and parks report.
Good evening, everyone. Starting out operations, the staff have been working hard on the work orders, grounds care, moving and painting offices. They've been out to some of the parks. We've got a lot of dead trees and limbs out in the parks. So we're trying to get some of those taken care of. They've been trimming and spraying for grass and weeds around stuff to eliminate weed whipping, stuff like that. Working with highway to try and get some assistance with them, use of their bucket truck to get some trees down in the parks because they're big trees and some are in situations where it's kind of close quarters for getting them down. So working on that. Had a lot of trees die this year. A lot of the ash trees have died. I know we have some at the rec park that are dead, and many of the other parks, some out front here at the government center. It's going to be an ongoing thing. Had one of the boat docks, the one at Lambs Creek, got a report that it looked like it was hit and one of the wheels was off of it. And the guys went out and pulled the dock out of there, and sure enough, one of the wheels was missing on it. And it was broken. One of the support legs was broken right off at the bracket. They're made of aluminum, so that impact and stress over the years causes them to break. So they pulled it out, they brought a section back, took it over to highway, and highway welded it, got it fixed up, got a new wheel on it, and back in the water the next day. So it was a pretty quick turnaround for that. I've been working with Chase up in Land and Water Conservation as far as grant. He gets an annual grant, and that is something that we could use to go toward paying for replacement docks. So working with him to get a replacement dock at Lambs Creek and at Kleist Landing. They get a lot of use and they're in need of replacement. Guys are, well, we're headed for the fair, like Deb said. The guys usually do work and start prepping ahead of time for getting ready for the fair. So they're going to be doing stuff at the rec park in preparation of the fair happening. The big push will be the week prior to the fair. We do a lot of setup. The fair board members do get together. A lot of the people that are involved in the fair get together the Saturday before, and they set up gates and everything, and they pull them out, and that has helped a lot. They started doing that last year, so it takes a lot of the stress off of my staff for doing it, so that helps out. Really appreciated there. Projects like Larry mentioned about the paving at the rec park. Highway got out there and they ground it up from the 17th Street entrance north of the cattle barn, around in front of the grandstand, and up to the road right in front of the city water building. They ground that, and then they did an overlay on pavement all around the grandstand, and then new pavement was laid on everything that they ground up. Looking at doing improvements, there was discussion around the grandstand of what to do. At one point, it was taking the old pavement out. And then for water runoff, it was determined it would probably be better to do an overlay on that. And then there was also some upgrading done to the entrances to the grandstand at the same time to make it better, less of the washing of clay out of the racetrack or the sand that is by the bleachers and inside on the east entrance. But all an improvement. My staff took down the fence around the entrance to the grandstand, took down the fence and the gates so that highway could do a better job with their rollers getting in between the posts and everything. They were working on putting that back up today. I would assume they got it back up today, but they'll have it back up. So then racing has a race this Friday night. So they would, I believe they have one this Friday night. They would be able to do their racing stuff and have the gates there. I know they do have two other races in July prior to the fair, so they would need the gates for that too, but things are getting back to where they should be. It's some other maintenance improvement things at the rec park that we want to get done before the fair too, to make it look even better. As you walk into this building, you may notice that there's a change in the public health entrance. You may or may not notice there used to be a gray colored floor mat there now, and now it is black. It's a carpeted mat that is on the floor. It's actually built into the floor. It's recessed into the floor. And that's designed for sand and dirt to go down through it. As you walk in, you can vacuum the carpet on it, but the sand and stuff goes down through it. And then periodically you can roll that mat back and clean all that dirt out of there. Well, a number of years ago, some of the guys from IT and some of the facility staff were bringing in some heavy equipment for IT moving into the building. And they opted to bring the equipment in through that entrance. And the floor mat is made of aluminum channels. And they went right through the center there. Well, that compressed the center of the aluminum, and so it bowed up the sides. So we were having problems with it sticking up and getting worse and being a trip hazard. So we got that replaced. So I ordered it in. My staff took out the old one, installed the new one, which was great. They do a great job on stuff like that. But now that's all in there. It looks a lot better. And then now we don't have the trip hazard or problems with the closet door hitting on it. I'm in the process of getting the RFPs out there for painting the buildings at the rec park. The two old highway shop buildings are painted gray. There's gray that's peeling off of there. And so that needs to be redone. I did put out RFPs for it last year. It came back over budget and it got late in the year. We didn't do anything with that, so we opted to put that out there again. And I did end up getting hold of emails to other contractors that might be interested in, so we could get possibly some more bids back. Last year we got 2 bids. Doing the same thing with the pressure washing of the government center and the judicial center. The sandstone on the buildings is really looking dull and dirty. We want to do that. Last year, we got back 1 bid on the pressure washing, which was a company out of Georgia. So apparently they saw it on wherever and they put a bid in on it, just going by some Google Earth maps, looking at it, the address, and say, well, we'll do this. Well, it was a ridiculous cost, of course, and we threw that out. So putting it out there again, and again, with that, I got some other email addresses out there, more people that could possibly bid on that. So hopefully we get some good feedback on that. Then I'm also working on the RFP for the Monoman Park restroom to get that project taken care of, move forward on it this year and get it completed. County fleet, everything is running well with those, with the cars and everything. Although I do have a couple of windshields that are broken that I need to get replaced. Other than that, we've been doing normal maintenance with oil changes and stuff. The fleet cars are very busy. They're going all the time, going here, there, and everywhere, and they're booked up. So they're getting their use. Sent out the financial report. Everything that I'm seeing on the financial report from my end is seems to be going on track for the year. I do a report out of SAP that gives me the percentage of budget amount that's left. So I went through there and there's only a couple of items on the budget that are under 50%. So we're halfway through the year. Should be at that 50% mark. There's quite a few that are above 50%, up in that 70%. So budget is doing well there. And I guess I wanted to throw out there, Dan, myself, and Chris Corpola met yesterday, talked over some projects for facilities, and one of the things that came up was the presentation that Dan did with Verigy for the energy. And just wanted to throw that out there and see if there was any discussion that committee members wanted to do on that, as far as any questions or any more conversation on where we would go from here on energy savings. I know that everyone is very interested in going green, saving energy, saving natural gas usage, getting into solar to save electricity. But I guess kind of wanted to see if there was any more thoughts after our last month presentation from Dan.
Anyone
I
else?
got a question. Is there a budget ask for that or not?
Not at this point.
Okay.
Some of that had to deal with the judicial center that needed some replacement. How long can we wait on some of that stuff?
So the judicial center HVAC system is original to the building, 1998. Some of the parts for that system are getting very difficult to find. It is not energy efficient. The example of the boilers over there, we're still running 2 boilers that used to be high pressure steam boilers, converted to hydronic, that run 24/7, 365. So those are running now through the summer because that system is a dual heat. So you have your boilers running that provide hot water. Then you also are running your chiller, and your chiller is providing cold. Well, you're constantly doing that dual temperature to maintain your temperature in the building, which is inefficient. It's the same type of system that was at the old government center downtown. And if anybody remembers the discussion of the government center building there, was that the HVAC system needed to be replaced. And it was a huge expense. That was one of the big things that was presented for selling the building and renovating this building and moving to this one. The city of Menominee has now since put in a new system there, and they have a lot better system. But as far as for budgeting for this, they're, the Verigy would be working with getting rebates and all that, or any grant money that would be available. So that would bring the cost down. But and also in that report was that, if we were to replace the current system with something equal to it, it's going to be actually more than what converting to a geothermal system.
So what are so can we start putting the money in the capital improvements plan? Because we have just a little bit, but it's for controls, isn't it?
So
Right.
in the capital improvements plan, for past years, it was approved for the 250 or 300,000 for the controls. There's also a capital improvement for one of the years that I put in for replacing the chiller over there, which I think that's like 400,000. Those 2 things would be items that would go toward the judicial center HVAC, because that's all involved in that. So there is some money there, but it's going to be a costly venture.
But we need to do it. We need to do something otherwise.
It will need to be addressed at some point, yes.
Right. And so, yes, what are our next steps to, move towards geothermal? So getting it into the capital improvements plan, I'm guessing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And can we, how fast can we get it moving? I don't know I'm guessing we need an RFP to, right, get bids.
You want to take that one, Dan?
So, so to put it on the capital improvement plan, because we just passed the 2025 one, we would have to do it essentially around this time next year is when that would get approved. So we could put it on as a 2026 item for the capital improvement plan, which theoretically would get it ready to go in 2026.
Yeah.
Now, there's a question about whether we could do the RFP and get the work done or whatever. It could be something where similar to like the highway project where you're doing some of that initial work in 26 and then the actual work and the expenses happen in 27 type thing. But and that we could always put it in a 2026 capital plan, and then if it doesn't get done in that year, kind of kick it forward. But that would be about the fastest I think you could do it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you get it on a capital improvement plan, get things in the works, because it's not going to be a project that's going to happen overnight. It's going to be time consuming, all the prep work and everything, and then getting down to the actual work of doing it is going to be a lot also.
But, and certainly, we just talked about budget. The judicial, I don't know if I had the estimates when we met around that. I think we got them that day, but to just do the judicial HVAC stuff, which is the kind of more urgent priority, was about 4.4 million.
Yeah.
I think. And that one wasn't going to pay for itself in 2025 years, but it was going to do better than the current system.
Yeah.
I think in the end, over 25 years, it would cost about, I think it was like 1.5 million. So it would kind of pay off about 3 million of that.
I got a question.
Yep.
The current equipment we got, how long does that gonna last? Or do you just keep on putting parts in it?
We have put parts in it as needed, and we do our maintenance on it. But there's things that could go out and we might possibly not be able to find the parts for.
Then you'll have an emergency fix.
Then it would have to be emergency, and then we'd probably end up dipping into contingency. Right now, that system can only be controlled by a computer that is over in the maintenance office at the judicial center. You make your adjustments on that computer and then go out to the location of where you're making the adjustment to make sure that everything is working properly and things are moving the way they should be. And that computer is that's a program that is very old and not something we can have on the county network. It's old. It's not good.
I would say, one of those things, if you did make a contingency request, you may put, I don't know, throw a number out there, $30,000 into something and then completely replace it a year later.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So,
and that's why we haven't done anything with the controls over there, is because you start with the controls. Well, if you're going to put the controls in there, who's to say that those controls are going to be useful for the new system, the geo system, and you end up replacing them. You start replacing parts thinking forward, but by the time you get the whole geo system in there, are they compatible? So we opted to not do anything with the HVAC system. Or the HVAC controls, I should say.
Could you kind of like make up a schedule of what we have to do to get to that point? Is there a way of letting me look at something that what we have to do?
Yeah. I mean, so you know, the first part was like getting something from Verigy, getting something like that from someone, to get an idea of costs, what you're gonna be spending. And then it would go into getting the preparation work done, the design of a system and costing that all out to figure out what you're actually gonna put in, what it would be. And then you could do phasing of the installation, I'm sure. You know, you could take out the boilers and put in some small, high efficiency boilers. That would be a start there. And then work yourself toward putting in other stuff. I don't know for sure how you could phase that, but
Would that take like 10 years?
the more you phase it, it's gonna take quite a while.
So basically you're just upgrading till you get to where you want to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you gotta make sure that everything is gonna stay compatible through that upgrade. So you don't get to a point where you're going to put something in and it affects something that you already replaced and it won't work together. So then you gotta replace what you already replaced.
And then when we get that all replaced, then it'll be something better.
Well, quite possibly, but
By the time you get done, it's outdated.
Mhm.
it's like a computer. Dan buys one today, tomorrow it's outdated.
Yeah, we use that analogy in the computer world
Yeah.
a lot too. We call it a forklift replacement, or you just kind of do that perpetual, like you're just kind of knocking off pieces of it over time, and there's advantages to both.
Yeah.
What happens in the event of a catastrophic failure of the system?
If there's a catastrophic failure, then it's coming to the members of the county board to decide what to do, where we're at and where to get the money,
Mhm.
you know,
Okay.
and what we can do at that
Yeah.
point, you know.
Okay.
Well, I think it has to get on the 26 agenda and then have a deep discussion, pros, cons, numbers on that for the 26 CIP program, 26, whatever. We got to get it on there to get started because we're kicking the can down the road too long for the maintenance on this thing.
Yeah, this is absolutely untenable because we're just walking on eggshells. Because I mean, that's the kind of thing in a, if we had a big, something happened at the judicial center that, would cause it to fail, or just, a fire or something, that would take out the whole system, then there's nothing. That's really scary.
So, yeah, if there's anything we can do in 2025, like, is there any work before the 2026? So I think we should get it moving.
Yeah, and I think some of it had come up and we talked about it a little bit next year is really, and maybe this is more of that short term, is just coming up with there's the judicial center. There's the neighbors, would you say is now, what, 11 years?
So that is 11 years old.
11
yes.
years old.
Yeah.
The HVAC in this building is what?
So that was 2014. It was installed and started running in 15. So that's 9 years.
It's 9 years old. So kind of putting together, what are these lifetimes and what do
Yeah,
we need to do?
That was kind of a
with that,
discussion
with the-
of having what are the needs of facilities? What are the needs of our buildings? And then kind of prioritize those to see what should be done first,
Can you bring that back? I mean, because you must know our timeline and what's most important and.
Yeah.
And, yeah. And like I say, I think that's all known. I just don't know that it's ever been,
Yeah.
here's a report of,
Yeah, yeah.
of what it is.
Our outlook, yeah,
Yeah.
so we can get it into the
Yeah.
plans and get it funded.
Yeah, just if it's that CIP, the whole board will see it, and I think that's important to start seeing the whole numbers. But the whole board needs to see it, not just us, so.
Mhm. And I'm not sure about the solar, because that was another like 15 or something. It's a huge.
So that's something that, you know, as we go to put that forward, so the CIP call is gonna come out in February or whatever of
Mhm.
next year. And that's something that we can put that in there, and we can put them in as 2 items. And then the board can really have that discretion of, nope, kick the solar a year or do
Yep.
them together, or however they want to go about that.
All right. Oh,
I will plan for definitely having that
the
on the
time, yeah.
CIP for 2026 for sure, for February. In the meantime, I will put together, you know, the list of, you know, the facilities needs of what should be done and kind of prioritize. Which the HVAC at Judicial is probably going to be on the top of the list, but we can put that together for next month's meeting.
That'd be great.
And
Give us a timeline or plan, like.
yeah, kind
We
of
can see it.
gonna give you that to you, so.
Promise to not get scared though.
Well, we just heard 4.4 million, so.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's another thing, highway, like how far can we push it down and
Right.
push it off? Yeah.
So that is all I have for my report.
Okay, any other questions?
I got an easy one. Dan, the guys did a great job on fixing that door. But we still can't get the emergency door open. And when the young guy that parks the pickup truck in the dog place on Monday, they got to get like an older gentleman that has to really readjust the seat. So when the youngster comes to work to mow the grass, he'll know that a truck was moved and it was a larger person that moved it. So they're gonna be there next Monday again, so,
I will let my seasonal know that.
yeah.
And it's not a kid.
Oh, it's not.
He's older than me.
Yeah. Well, he's in pretty good shape then. Let's put
Yeah.
it this way, when the ladies thought about moving the truck and trailer out through that door, knowing that it probably got hit doing the same thing, they weren't very anxious to even give it a try. But
So
we got her done.
where is, he's backing the truck and trailer into that building. And so what,
Oh, I hope not. I mean, I don't know. It appeared to me that he had drove through from the fair office end and parked it.
he backed it in.
He backs in?
He backs in because we have a remote control on that door. So he
Oh.
hits the garage door remote and backs it in there.
Oh, okay.
So I just want to find out where it can be parked, what needs to come through that overhead door.
Well, the whole dog project works that area, so I parked the truck in the first half of the building. Coming in the door from the street.
Okay. I will have him park it back further away from the door so then that door can be accessed.
Yeah, right.
More
And then
easily.
have him check that emergency door too.
That emergency door, or you're talking about the service door?
Yeah,
Yeah, that service door is, the frame is rusted
okay.
and swelled up really bad. The only way to fix that is to replace the whole door and frame.
Right.
Yep.
It's just
is
that,
hard.
you know, you do have the emergency exit sign above it. And I
Mhm.
hate to somebody figure they can't get through it and,
You can get through it from the inside.
oh, you can, okay.
You can exit and push out. But
Okay.
going in from the outside is the
Okay.
problem.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, I didn't try it. I'm just going by what they
Yeah,
told me.
yeah.
So, but,
Okay. I will follow up on that.
right. Tell them that I was real careful with this truck.
Will do.
So I was wondering if we can move number 9 up for next meeting, because our August meeting is the same day. So I think I need to, is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Right, don't I need to like get approval for that? Because our August meeting is the same day as the budget.
Yep.
And, so I'm wondering, and July 24th is during the fair.
Yep.
So could we split the difference and move it into like the second week in August? I don't know,
August meeting or the July meeting?
moving the July, and then we wouldn't have the August meeting, so we would like,
I think we've done that in the past, as we've opted
to-
to not have the July because it's been during the fair. And we've gone to the August meeting.
but yeah, the August meeting, we have a conflict, so
Yeah.
if we split the difference for, would that work for it, people? So I'm thinking August 14th, this looks like there isn't another,
The 14th would work for me. Yeah.
Executive said.
right, which we'd have to do in July anyways, so we would just be back to back.
The highway transit.
Oh, you have highway, no, there's,
Executive, that'd be a good day.
oh, there doesn't, it only shows executive on the 14th, so the highway isn't on there yet. Oh, is it?
Yeah, highway and transit. So yeah, that'd be fine with me.
Would it?
Yeah.
Everybody else, Ron? Larry?
Well, I'm always looking
Eight
for
to-
better
eight,
offer,
the heck.
but so far,
Okay, Barbara?
I'm good.
Okay, so we will move, but we'll combine the July and August meetings to August 14th at 6 PM.
Executive's done by then.
Yes.
Yes,
Perfect.
gives them a reason to have it done. All right. So, Scott, do you change calendars or how does that?
I will change that. Yes.
Okay,
I'll take care of that.
all right, thank you.
Yep.
And so, so number 7, so I've got, so in order to go into closed session, we need a motion and a second. So do we have?
What's it?
You got some discuss. We'll say.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I make motion.
A second.
All right, and then we need a roll call vote
Or a unanimous.
or a unanimous. Okay.
I don't know if that's.
Is it? Okay. So all in favor? I
Aye.
move into closed session. All right, so that's unanimous. And so we have to report that. So now the committee is going to go into closed session to discuss transfer station. And so all members of the public need
Yep.
to leave. And I think, so,
I'll stop the recording.
okay. Yes, please. And Deb, are you